There's a new Ohio congressional representative in Washington. Hear from Mike Carey as he takes over former Rep. Steve Stiver's seat. One local school board will add new faces after this week's election, what they say they want to change within the Dublin school district. And now that the 2021 election is over, all eyes are on 2022 and that governor's race. One candidate is already demanding a bold move. We thank you so much for joining us for Face the State on this Sunday. I'm Tracy Townsend. Ohio has new representation in Washington, D.C. Mike Carey, the Republican coal lobbyist, became a U.S. congressman when he was sworn in on Capitol Hill this week. You can see he is here taking the oath with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Remember, this was a special election. Carey is replacing Republican Steve Stivers. Stivers, you'll recall, stepped down to run the Ohio Chamber of Commerce. Now, all of this means Carey will have to face another election with new legislative lines being drawn, and those will be in effect in 2022. Here's what Carey said on Tuesday as the votes were being counted.
The one thing that we all knew in this primary was that we knew that no matter who was going to get out of that primary, no matter who got out of this primary, we were going to make sure that we did everything to make sure that we got a Republican to represent the 15th Congressional District. I will tell you, this is one of those moments that you think, my gosh, those people really spent a lot of money to beat up Mike Carey over the last few months, right? A lot of negative signs, a lot of negative ads, but I will tell you, I would take that every day, because what the people in the 15th Congressional District are suffering through right now, I'll gladly take that on. I'll gladly take that on, and I'm going to tell you why. Because we are seeing inflation for the first time in our country. Everybody who fills up at the gas pump knows what's happening. And we know why it's happening. And if you get real clever, you might see some of those little stickers with Joe Biden on it that said, "I did this." You see those on the gas pump? But it's not just that, folks. We are looking at the crisis that we have at the border. We're looking at our schools, and I will tell you that's the greatest thing tonight. Again, the votes coming across this district, school boards, people are paying attention, and people want to make a difference. So to those of you tonight that are voting in the school board elections, thank you. You're doing the Lord's work.
Mike Carey beat his Democratic challenger, State Representative Alison Russo, by 16%, or about 26,500 votes. Russo had this to say on election night.
Farmers, students, our small business owners, and workers who, despite their diverse backgrounds, are all united in their desire for a better future for Ohio. And almost to a person, they agreed on two things. One, their sense of frustration over the dysfunction that is gripping our politics. And number two, the hope that we can build opportunity in the state once again. And it is my belief that to build that opportunity, we have to put working families at the center of every single thing that we do.
One Ohio mayoral race is being acknowledged for breaking barriers. Hamilton County Clerk of Courts Aftab Purival is set to become Cincinnati's next mayor. Purival ran against Congressman Steve Chabot for Congress in 2020, but lost. He will now replace Cincinnati Mayor John Cranley, who is retiring because of term limits.
I don't know if they envisioned a night like tonight, but I believe that because of that incredible decision, my family went from being refugees to now the next mayor of Cincinnati.
And Purival will be the city's first Asian American mayor. This week's election brought some big change to the Dublin school board. 3 women were elected this week, and 2 of them are people of color. None of the incumbents won. As 10 TV's Kevin Landers explains, the new board faces plenty of challenges, from a growing student population to issues involving diversity, equity, and inclusion.
40% of Dublin students reside outside the city. That alone shows you how large this school district is, and the growth isn't slowing. Schools like Dublin Jerome High School are using modulars to educate students. It's an issue 2 newly elected school board members say is not acceptable.
And that is definitely not ideal and not what we would expect from Dublin City Schools. So it is a challenge to deal with that.
We need to come through with our promises first. We got Levy money in 2018 to add additions to Jerome High School, and we have yet to do that. We have added now 12 more modulars. People are learning in hallways. We have failed on our promise for money that we have.
The modulars are expected to be removed in 2023. Both Tiffany De Silva and Lindsay Gillis say growth in the district is one of the major challenges facing this area. More students put pressure on class sizes. While both welcome the growth, they say the key is being proactive about it.
I think it's important that we do get updated growth projections, because the projections that we were working from before were obviously under projected.
Both newly elected board members are people of color and believe for the first time the school board truly represents everyone. They say diversity, equity, and inclusion are high on their priority lists.
I want to know why some libraries have more books than other libraries.
Do our students who have disabilities have access to the playground equipment?
Both candidates take issue with this school survey that was randomly sent to 460 Dublin residents. It concluded that most people are satisfied with the growth of the district, that the mood surrounding Dublin schools is effusive.
I have a real problem with that. We say that we're like real transparent and we engage everyone, but I have yet to meet someone who filled out that survey. I don't think that things are all sunshine and smiles here in Dublin City Schools.
Addressing the district's challenges is something both candidates say they are excited to tackle. Kevin Landers, 10 TV News.
Diana Rigby is the other woman newly elected to the school board, and according to the Ohio Department of Education statistics, Dublin City Schools is the 10th largest district in our state, with a student population of 17,000. I recently talked with political analyst Herb Asher about why such a spotlight is being placed on school board races during this election season and the issues those boards are encountering.
Another issue that to me is sort of a phony issue is critical race theory.
Why do you think it's phony?
Because most schools aren't teaching critical race theory. You know, it's really more an approach to how you would study things, just as Marxism was an approach to how you might study things. The real issue here for our curriculum is, do we actually teach American history, the good and the bad as it unfolded?
Now, when it comes to school levies, more than 80% of school tax issues passed in this election, and that's according to the Ohio School Boards Association. Last year, 67% of levies passed. The association says it's encouraging to see these issues pass because of all of the financial strain the pandemic has put on Ohio schools. Now, you can see a full list of the election winners by texting the word results to 614-460-3345. You'll get a link sent to your phone. Ohio Secretary of State is putting the Franklin County Board of Elections under administrative oversight after 3 people were able to vote twice. Frank LaRosa's office says an investigation found issues with equipment that is supposed to show who voted during the early voting period. Some of these poll books did not update properly, and in 3 cases, voters were allowed to vote twice. The Secretary of State says none of their votes impacted the results of any races. Franklin County now has to report weekly to the state to ensure it is effectively administering elections. This week, Ohio House Republicans announced a highly controversial congressional delegation map. Right now, there are 12 Republicans and 4 Democrats in Congress, but under the newly proposed map, only 2 Democratic seats would be safe: Columbus's 3rd congressional district and Cleveland's 11th congressional district. The Senate also released its new map, which is more competitive than the House version. Lawmakers have until the end of the month to approve a new map. We are nearly a year away from deciding who will be Ohio's next governor, and this week the race has one candidate demanding a bold move. Democrat John Cranley of Cincinnati is calling on the firing of every member of the state's utility commission. This is in response, he says, to the largest bribery scandal in state history involving House Bill 6 and a power plant bailout. Kevin Landers explains why and has reaction from other candidates.
With the State House in the background, Democrat John Cranley says it's time to clean house.
This place is corrupt.
And he says the people who sit on the state's Public Utilities Commission must go.
So when I'm governor, I will fire them all, and we will bring in people who will put consumers first.
Why is Cranley going after the PUCO? Many reasons. Republican Governor Mike DeWine appointed the members, and Cranley believes because the PUCO didn't stop HB 6 from becoming law, its members are just as responsible as lawmakers who made the bill law.
Do you believe that the current sitting PUCO members are incompetent?
I think they sold us out.
I asked Governor DeWine for his reaction during his press briefing today.
I guess the political season has started. I'm not going to fire him.
DeWine appointed the former head of the PUCO, Sam Randazzo, who helped write HB 6 and is now under criminal investigation, but has admitted no wrongdoing and has not been charged. Democrat challenger Nan Whaley says she's open to firing members of the PUCO, but says more needs to be done to stop what she calls, quote, widespread culture of corruption in our state. Republican candidates Jim Renacci and Joe Blystone did not respond to our questions. Removing members of the PUCO is rare, although it has been done. Former Ohio Governor Dick Celeste asked for the resignations of PUCO board members after learning in 1981 the board granted 82% of all rate hike requests for utilities in the state.
And again, that was Kevin Landers reporting for us. Early this month, Hearst Energy agreed to give back $306 million to customers for collecting excessive profits over a 3-year period. Governor Mike DeWine and First Lady Fran stayed home over the past few days after they were exposed to COVID-19. 2 staff members recently tested positive. Both DeWines have been fully vaccinated and they got their booster shots. They've tested negative and they do not have symptoms. The governor held a virtual news conference earlier in the week to give an update on where the state stands as it relates to COVID cases.
I asked our team at the Department of Health to tell me how many people we had lost to COVID in October, the most recent full month. And they looked at that. They reminded me that death numbers are always lagging and they don't always report instantly, or they don't report instantly. But as of today, there have been reported 1,264 of our fellow Ohioans who have died in October. Deaths occurring in October will continue to be recorded. That number we would expect to go up some. If you break that down on the numbers that are in now, that comes down to about 41 of our fellow citizens who are dying every single day.
Ohio lawmakers have introduced anti-abortion legislation modeled off of that law in Texas, considered the most restrictive in the United States. I talked one-on-one with the bill's sponsor. Abortion legislation is once again in the spotlight at the State House. 2 Ohio lawmakers have introduced proposed legislation modeled off of the Texas law, considered to be the most restrictive in the nation. It would effectively end all abortions in Ohio. One of the sponsors is State Rep Jenna Powell. She told me there are no exceptions for rape or incest.
We know that life begins at fertilization, and to begin with, those situations are very, very difficult situations. Mm-hmm. And our heart goes out to people in those situations, and it's definitely not easy. But the science is very clear that life does begin at fertilization, and we must protect the most vulnerable.
So no fears about any kind of repercussions, any kind of financial repercussions then?
The issue that we're seeing right now in the state of Ohio is that there's over 50 children every single day that are being killed due to abortion.
This week, the U.S. Supreme Court heard arguments on the Texas legislation. The High Court appeared ready to permit a legal challenge. Several justices argue the legislation circumvents Roe v. Wade. We asked Ohio Democratic Party Chair Liz Walters where her party stands on this bill. Here's what she had to say.
Women's health is a critical issue everywhere in this country, and we can't sit silently by while Republicans take those extreme attacks on women's health decisions. Those belong to a woman and her doctor, to women and their families.
Planned Parenthood of Ohio released a statement earlier this week when the bill was introduced, saying banning abortion would be catastrophic to communities across Ohio. Another bill we're looking at this morning would allow teachers to be armed on school property without going through peace officer training. People who are against it say it would put students at risk, but proponents argue that it's the best way to protect students. Russo, Ohio School Board President Jeff Pringer spoke out in support of the bill during a House Criminal Justice Committee this week. That school used to have armed teachers, but doesn't anymore because of an Ohio Supreme Court ruling this summer that required armed teachers to go through peace officer training or have 20 years of law enforcement experience.
Our armed response plan is only a last resort if someone comes to our campus to harm our students or teachers.
The group, Ohio Moms Demand Action, say allowing guns in school zones raises concerns of the gun falling into the wrong hands or going off unintentionally.
I will not allow you to put my children in danger. It is your duty to come up with a framework in place regarding our children, to keep our children safe, so local schools can build a comprehensive plan to save the lives of children.
Can the federal government require you to get a COVID-19 vaccine? The Biden administration says yes. Ohio's Attorney General says no. We explore both of their arguments after the break. Ohio lawmakers are once again looking at a ban on vaccine mandates. The goal is to prevent Ohio schools, private colleges, and employers from these kinds of requirements. The short title of the bill refers to COVID-19, but the text of the legislation itself could include mandates for vaccinations against any disease. We should note the bill is unlikely to become law. Similar efforts have failed this year. And this comes as the Biden administration announced a January 4th deadline for the federal COVID-19 vaccine mandate for some employers. 10 TV's Brittany Bailey breaks down the mandate.
This mandate will affect 84 million workers across the country who work at companies with 100 or more employees. So as we mentioned, the deadline is January 4th. Workers must be fully vaccinated or undergo weekly testing and wear a mask. The rules are even tougher for the 17 million workers at hospitals, nursing homes, and other facilities that receive money from Medicare or Medicaid. Those workers will not have the option to get tested. They must get vaccinated. But we should point out there will be exemptions for medical and religious reasons. Now, companies that don't comply could face fines up to $14,000 for each violation. At this point, though, it's still not clear how this will be enforced. OSHA only has 1,850 inspectors to oversee 130 million workers at 8 million companies. Back to you.
Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost is taking the federal government to court over the mandate, and Yost tells us he's filing a lawsuit to block the mandate, in part because of the requirement on first responders. He says he worries deputies will quit, putting public safety in jeopardy. The White House tells us the Occupational Safety and Health Administration does have the legal authority to issue this standard. A senior administration official says there is well-established legal precedent for this. Here's how the AG responded.
The narrow power that they're trying to use to do this applies only to workplaces for things that exist in the workplace. The lack of a railing, a vat of acid, the workplace dangers, not dangers that occur everywhere on the entire planet.
Yost says he's not against vaccines, adding that he is vaccinated, but he says he's against requirements. Just this week, the first kids in the country were vaccinated against COVID-19. 10 TV's Richard Solomon got an inside look at the first kids to get vaccinated at Nationwide Children's Hospital.
Some of the bravest heroes wear some of the smallest capes.
I was kind of nervous to begin with because I don't like shots.
But these three little heroes conquered some fears Together, 10-year-olds Holden, Harper, and Parker McKenzie are triplets. And they did something they're pretty proud of on Wednesday.
It's been a long wait for us to get the vaccine, but I was beyond excited to get it, really hoping it's going to be super soon.
The three were some of the first in Central Ohio to get their first dose of the Pfizer vaccine at Nationwide Children's Hospital, one of the first pilot clinics to offer the vaccine for younger kids. In all, 37 kids from ages 5 to 11 suited up in the fight against COVID. Vaccinations started just one day after the CDC gave the final okay for kids.
It was easy. We just found out last night, so it was fine. So basically we only had one day.
And now that kids can get vaccinated, they're already thinking about what could happen with school.
I don't think it will necessarily really change about the masking mandate until maybe next year, but I do think it will not be as strict.
Doctors at Nationwide say they received 3,000 doses with the first shipment. The vaccine for kids, with the orange label, is 1/3 of the dosage older individuals would get.
Kids aren't little adults, so they had to get studied separately for this age group. And so just like we have all those routine childhood immunizations, this is one more to add on to really protect their child and their family.
And doctors plan to vaccinate 500 to 600 kids a day. But for these three, the vaccine is one thing they're glad they did together.
It was one of the best things ever. That today I was going to get my COVID vaccine.
In Columbus, Richard Solomon, 10 TV News.
And that 5 to 11 age group is now included in the state's Vax to School incentive program. 10 TV's Brian Somerville explains how you can make sure your child is part of the drawing.
Wednesday, the Ohio Department of Health telling the Buckeye State a large portion of 367,000 COVID-19 vaccinations will be ready to roll for children ages 5 through 11.
While it remains true that children are less likely than adults to get severely ill from COVID-19, they most certainly can and do become ill, even seriously ill, and can suffer lasting complications from the virus.
As of November 1st, more than 2,000 Ohio children have been hospitalized with COVID-19. There have been 15 deaths. Even still, ODH says it believes a vaccination can better protect school-age children from severe complications.
We know that the existing COVID-19 vaccines have been remarkably effective in preventing severe cases of COVID-19.
The state also announced Wednesday the expansion of the Ohio Vax to School program to include 5 to 11-year-olds, an incentive that is awarding $2 million in scholarships. Parents can register their children as soon as they receive the first dose.
To be eligible to win one of the 5 $100,000 grand prizes, you'll need to register no later than Wednesday, December 1st. Winners will be announced daily the week of November 29th through December 3rd. The bottom line is, the sooner you register, the better chance you have.
Physicians are saying whereas they used science to create the doses, which are lower than adults with less side effects, masks and social distancing should still be followed.
To be thinking about the importance of masking, as the vaccinated children will not be fully protected for some weeks.
Brian Somerville, 10 TV News.
Now, for all of the information relating to the Pfizer vaccine for children, again, ages 5 to 11, and for information about the Vax to School program, head over to 10tv.com. And we thank you so much for joining us here on Face the State today. Remember, if it affects you and your family and Ohio, we're here to make sure those accountable face the state.